Okay, so let's start with last two steps, which I just want to revise it for purpose of clarity. So step 4 includes selecting the relevant emission factor and actually calculating the CO2 emission. So as you can see in the bottom, the calculation for a plastic toy production has been done. What we have done here is we have taken the activity data from the previous steps, right? Where we know how much of plastic was used for manufacturing this toy, right? Just I'm taking one data right now, plastic as a raw material. Now, of course, you can say there must be some kind of low blower, some kind of mixture, chemical reaction, all those activities I'm not considering. I'm only considering the activity relating to the raw material which you have taken, which will be definitely in tons of or kgs of plastic required for each of the toy which you are making. Here, for example, we are doing Lego toy manufacturing. What we will do here is we will go and check the emission factor, carbon dioxide equivalent emission per kilogram of plastic pellets. That number I will get it from either DEFRA or EPA, CAC, whatever a database I am referring to. I will take that emission factor which is relevant to the plastic. Okay. Specifically the plastic kind which we are using. You have to be very specific as well, right? Because there are different type of plastics as well. And once I have that number, you multiply that number with the amount of plastic used per toy, you get that how much of carbon dioxide has been emitted by this particular toy. Simple. Now, the challenge remains with how to decide which emission factor I should take. So this slide specifically covers that part. What you need to keep in mind is three things. First is accuracy of the emission data, right? Or data accuracy. Second is verify whatever you use, it should be verifiable. Okay, so you should not use very niche industry data. A lot of the time, people also use industry data. Okay, there are several industry providers. They can also provide you for that particular plastic emission factor. I will suggest their verifiability will become challenging. So either you have to attach that company's credentials or company's supporting document which establishes the fact that they have expertise in this area. You should always try to take from the main and right sources. So accuracy includes that, of course, in the beginning we have already said organization boundary is important there. Emission sources, so which are those sources which are essential to calculate carbon emission that need to be established. And you cannot take only one side of the emission, rather you should try to take scope 1, 2 and 3, all three of it, right? Don't limit yourself to 1 and 2. It is recommended. And finally, the methodology which you are using for calculation also has to be accurate. So that's the accuracy part which will decide the emission factors. And you will soon enough understand why I am emphasizing on which emission factor you should take. But when you will go in scope 3, you will see that there are three different alternatives you can apply for each category. Right? So transparent emission reporting builds a trust and accountability, and it also helps in, if you get the verification done on the same, which is required sometime for compliance purposes, sometime for accuracy purposes, it enhances the credibility and supports the external certification. Last but not least is reporting and verifying. Again, here I'm going to introduce first time that what are the different modality for scope 1 and 2 people use for emission factors. Okay. So to have a emission data, accuracy which can be varying for organization to organization. But if you want to really establish that accuracy, make sure that the availability of activity data source is accurate. And I cannot emphasize enough that why activity data sources establishment is critical here. While some organizations do tracks their physical quantity, other depends on the financial data. So that is how the two data source comes into play. One is the spend model. A spend model will always talk about financial data coming from your ERP. And second is your activity based data, where you can calculate the quantity of that activity source, like fuel in the case, gas, meters, etc. So that number in terms of units is also essential. So either of these two you can use, or combination also you can use sometime. But ideally you should take whichever is important and readily available. Why I am saying, because that will decide how closer to accuracy you are. How you decide that? You decide that based on this tier mechanism suggested in GHG protocol. GHG protocol specify there are 3 tiers of data based on the accuracy of that data. How you establish that? Example, specifically in the case of scope 1 and 2, they have said that if the default factors are based on broad generic data. What do you mean by broad generic data? That is the data established by international companies like IPCC. IPCC AR6, if you are referring to, it is tier 1 data. Tier 1 means it is far away from the accuracy. Okay, that's how you should always visualize. The lower the number, the lower the accuracy. So tier 1 is the data. If you don't get any data, go to IPCC data. That is more appropriate for you, specifically for scope 1 emission factor and scope 2 emission factor. Second tier data is more specific factors based on the regional or sector data. So these are sectoral data which we try to get. Emission factor based on the sector. For example, cement, steel, they have their own emission factor. Energy in India, Central Electricity Authority, CEA in India produces this data. Now they are very specific, and that's why they are called tier 2 data, because the nearness to accuracy increases as you go down. And applying a regional emission data for grid electricity specifically, which is relevant for scope 2, specific to India as provided by CEA, gives you that accuracy. But it is limited data. You have to understand, if you are going for sectoral data, you will not get all your activity covered there. So you should be always knowing that. Okay. So tier 2 data is the next best source from tier 1. Tier 1 is broad data. Tier 2 is little more specific and regional, like Mumbai. Yeah. For example, for mobility data, Mumbai has they have done several researches in past. A lot of university does that empirical study, that they measure for an employee how much kilometer they generally travel if they are sitting in a metro 1 cities like Mumbai. Okay, so you will get that data 40 kilometers. For Mumbai, that data is on an average, that person travels 40 kilometers to reach to their workplace. Why that data is important? Because again, employee commute category under scope 3 requires that emission factor. Also, transportation, if you are outsourcing, okay, you can always ask for bills, but how to triangulate that data? To check that data, you also need empirical data like this. So which one will be more accurate? IPCC data for Mumbai will be more accurate, or the Mumbai research data, which is available in India, some university has done, will be accurate. What do you think, Gaurang or Bhaskar ji or Sushant? Which one will be more
It should
accurate?
be the local data, that is Mumbai research data.
Absolutely. And that's why any regional or sectoral data is next best source. It is a better source than the broader data. Somebody is sitting in IPCC office. By the way, IPCC used to have an India office as well, if you remember. The Terry chairman used to also, participate there. Then comes the tier 3 data. Again, the larger the number, accuracy is better. This
So,
is,
it's a small question.
yes.
Actually, right now you are explaining suppose if I'm calculating scope one, that for scope one, how much fuel is consumed, say petrol is consumed in production, plus how much is consumed by our vehicles, etc. But sir, I have never seen any entity maintaining that level of data. Suppose if it will always be in financial terms, like during the years this much petrol amounting this much petrol is consumed. Nothing, I mean, like how many liters, because petrol rates also keeps on varying. So I've never seen data maintained like that
When
in any
I'm talking,
organization.
no, 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 no. It depends on company to company and industry to industry, Gaurav. Okay, a lot of people do maintain their liter consumption as well. And when you have a liter, you need not to convert into rupees term, right? Because there is a emission factor specific to the liters of diesel, liters of gasoline, liters of petrol. Yeah, so you need not to go to that specificity. And obviously, this data will be much better than the spend-based data. The spend-based data has its own trouble. But generally, if you ask me, for a company which is initiating the project, of course, they will uh, uh, rely on the spend-based data. So you have to always understand there are two type of data source. One is a spend-based, one is activity-based. When you are talking about activity, you will always have in liters, kgs, all that kind of pallets, number of pallets, all that kind of data will be there. When you don't have data, and specifically when we will go into scope 3, you will see, then only you should go to, your ERP system or your company's data. Ideally preferred, means best in quality data if you want to find, that is a quantity based data, ideally preferred. But you are right, some lot of company doesn't have it, they do not record it, they see a burden. But it's not a big deal. If you check their inventory department, the stock tech department, they will always have entry done, right? Apart from bill of lading, they will also have how much quantity, what was the pallet number, all that is available. Yeah, only thing, you need to educate them, you need to educate your supply chain. So it requires education. And that's why only matured company can get more accurate data. A startup companies, a starting company in the ESG transition, they will not have that data. I agree with you. Yeah. But ideally, you have to understand, if you want to increase the accuracy, you have to go to tier 3. And what is tier 3? Highly specific factor derived from direct measurement. So if somebody is putting environmental measurement instrument on their chimneys, yeah, or their assembly line, that is better, because when you do the soldering on an electronic gadget, there is an emission happening. Correct? Yesterday we saw that. That emission has to be recorded real time. So ideally, of course, if you will go and buy those equipment, it will be you will be ripped off. But what people do, there are several companies in EHS, etc. They have already bought it, and they will give you on the lease for 10 days, 20 days, 30 days, quarterly basis. They can give you on lease. You use that machine, calculate your 1 quarter data, and then you replicate it based on the every quarter stock being developed, or real money, rupees being posted, etc. Right? That's how you get the highly specific factors derived from direct measurement. Direct measurement again is calculating emission factor from on-site measurements. Okay, fuel data, if I have in liters, that is the best way to measure it. In rupees, that is the trouble. Actually, if I take the rupees, sometime I have purchased at 10, sometime I have purchased at 15 rupees a liter. It's 100 rupees or 105 rupees. How I will differentiate which quantity was how much? And all the emission factor generally goes to calorific value. Okay. So it is not, it is opposite other way around, Gaurang. Okay. You have to understand that the accuracy increases if you go into exact number or unit, because unit conversion will be more accurate. Does this make sense now? Clarity has come? If that is the case, let's go. And this data source is generally company specific. Let's go for a quick quiz so we can check if you remember anything from yesterday's session. Okay, so this is going to be checked with your peers. Whoever has attempted in past, they are on your screen. You can always scan the QR code from your mobile. And if you are using from mobile, then I don't know how you will do it. Then you can just open another browser, put slido.com and give this code there, 4196033. Go ahead, everyone, join in. And you will be measured again, additional 14 people who have recently attempted. Okay, one person is already in. Good, two people, Bharti, Bhaskar, Gaurav. Okay, somebody is typing. Yeah, I can see you, Gaurang. You can answer in the chat box. Let me check that. But try it. If you will not try, you cannot recall. Recall value will be lower. Okay. Okay, so everybody is in. Let's start. What does organizational boundary in GHG accounting determine? What it determines? GHG accounting in organization boundary, what exactly you do? Do you check geographical area of operation? Okay, I got Gaurang answering it. Wonderful. You check company legal structure, the entity and operations include in the emission inventory, or is it that number of employee involved in reporting cases? Okay, you have 5 seconds more. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Can anybody on my behalf speak? I need to get my water bottle filled. Bhaskar ji, can you run it?
Yeah. How do I do that?
I'm giving you this thing.
Okay.
Making you co-host. Now you are co-host. So just click on the screen and I believe it will go to next slide.
Okay.
Does it
Yeah.
happen? Is it happening? No, it is not happening.
Yeah, it is happening. No? What does the organizational boundary in the GHG accounting determine? This is the second one, right?
No, this is the first question.
This is
Internal.
the first.
Okay, I think I can't give you that. Advanced sharing option. No, I can't give you that. Okay, so let me at least get the answer here. So correct answer is C, and most of you got it correct. Wonderful. This question, please go and read it, and meanwhile, I will just grab my water. Bhaskar ji, if you can read it for all.
Yeah, sure. Under which approach are emissions accounted for based on the proportion of ownership in joint venture? Under which approach are emissions accounted for based on the proportion of ownership in joint venture?
So each of you got the correct answer. Let's go next. Bhaskar ji.
Yeah. What is the key difference between financial control and operational control in GHG accounting?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Correct answer. Next.
Which scope includes emissions from purchased electricity used by the organization? One of IBM's key advantages in setting a robust emissions reporting framework is
Good, Gaurang. You are also going well. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Correct answer is A. Next question.
why does IBM align its annual reporting with the GHG protocol? Measure performance against competitors to ensure consistency across years. To enhance tracking.
Correct answer is first to measure the performance against competitor and ensure consistency. Next question.
The main reason for identifying emission source in GHG accounting is
Okay, the correct answer is C, to determine the emission hotspot and drive the reduction strategy.
drive reduction strategies effectively. Direct emissions from company-owned vehicles fall under which category?
Okay, that's a correct answer.
Which tier of emission factors provides more accuracy through localized or industry specific data?
Correct answer is tier 2. Next
Tier
question.
2. What is the primary purpose of emission factors in carbon accounting?
Correct answer is translate activity data into CO. That's it. Good. So still Manish Kumar remains the previous batch member at the top. And actually, of course, they have given a lot of other questions answered. That's why they are there. Okay, so let's go for now scope 3 discussions.
Sir, I had a question.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, actually, I was checking out the Apple sustainability report. So, in that scope, what they were saying is they have given the breakup of their emissions, and in that one thing was product manufacturing, and they put it in the scope 3. So, I got a little confused, like how come product manufacturing come into the scope 3 emissions?
Product
So,
manufacturing.
yes, sir.
Okay, for them, product manufacturing happens where?
In
It is not.
China, they are also.
Sorry?
Uh, I assume that it could be outsourced, but what they have given a little bit description is supplies energy efficiency 1.7 metric tons and low carbon material 5.8 metric tons. So it could be like you outsource or what?
Okay, so they have stopped writing it now. Otherwise, in iPhone, on the back, if
Uh,
you see, it is
uh-huh.
designed only by Apple, manufactured by
Uh-huh.
Foxconn sitting in India. India has the largest export this year of mobiles because of iPhone getting manufactured here.
Oh.
ऑपरेशनल कंट्रोल पे नहीं आएगा वो यूजुअली
ऑपरेशन कंट्रोल में आएगा बिकॉज डिजाइन दे कंट्रोल या बट मैन्युफैक्चरिंग एक तो यूएस में हो नहीं रही उनके बाउंड्री में do not own Foxconn, right? They only own the design. And that's why if somebody else is manufacturing, it you cannot. And they do not have equity as well, right? So any model you will apply, it will be part of scope 3. Because for them, raw material is the mobile. They only do the
Oh,
sales and they only do the design. Raw material is
okay.
complete mobile, okay?
59% is that only, actually.
Absolutely, it will be. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Okay, let's start. Good, you have read it. So tell us, what did you read there and guide others who could not spend time on it? Give us a
No,
quick,
I'll give you kind of
just
a
give us a brief.
overview.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically by 2030 they wanted to be the carbon this thing zero carbon they are trying to be, and they have bifurcated their emissions into design material, then electricity usage and direct emissions mainly. And their scope 1, scope 2 emissions are quite low actually. Scope 1s are only less than 1%, and scope 2 also, which is spent in electricity, is also less than 1%. Mostly they have the scope 3 emissions, and they try to replace using of lot of recycled material. Like for example, recycled titanium they are using, and recycle aluminum. When they are using that recycle most of the times. Like, so 22% renewable and recycled material they're using, aluminum they are using, and almost 95% recycled titanium they are using. So that are the steps they have taken to achieve the zero carbon, and their target is 2030. Yes, that is all. And they have given the material and materials which they are using, the bifurcation of that, and how they are going to replace it. Like that. Hello? Yeah, I hope I'm
Actually,
audible.
Gaurang get out of it and he's unable to log in. Give me 1 minute. Let me
Yeah.
get. Good. So recycle is absolutely correct observation. They focus on recycle, and of course, last year they have also reported that watches which they are manufacturing is completely carbon neutral, and they are targeting in couple of years even mobile phones will be carbon neutral. Well, thank you for that, and hope everybody reads at least Apple or Google one report before we end the session. Uh, Today we are going to discuss about scope 3 emissions, and the session coverage will we will be starting with giving you the overview that what are the statistics, how much development has happened, and remember, by the way, the speed which I have observed and the coverage which we need to do requires 1 day more extra. So 1 day is because of the Makar Sankranti or Pongal, and 1 day we need extra because of we are being slow, and that is good for us. I'm not minding it taking one more class, so I believe you guys should not mind it as well joining in. Okay, so scope 3 emissions, we will discuss that. We will look into what are a specific framework which will apply in scope 3. We will also look into categories wise breakdown and identify the emission sources of those specific categories. We will look into importance and challenges of scope 3 emission. And finally, we will again look the step number 5 where you report and verify. Clear? Let's start with scope 3 emissions. Scope 3 emission, specifically, you have to understand that a scope 3 emission constitutes the most of the emission in certain sector. It depends from sector to sector. Okay. So we'll see that on the next slide that which sector has the highest and which sector has the lowest. There are certain sector which are very, they have emissions even 10 to 20% is coming from scope 3. That kind of sectors are also there. So we will check that quickly. Now, what you need to understand, whenever we will talk about scope 3, we will talk about two different distinct features of scope 3. What is that? This relates to the supply chain network of our businesses. One is owned, which is scope 1. Second is indirect, which covers scope 2 and scope 3. If you are using purchase as a word and still you are near to making decisions, then means whether I should take from this source or other source, I purchase from MSAB or I purchase from BSEB, whichever, there is one supplier with renewable energy, one supplier is grid energy. If have that control, you are in scope 2. The moment you talk about supply chain network, it goes into scope 3. Okay. It has two sides. One is the upstream side, which is from raw material to the gate of your company. Whatever process happens, that process relates to upstream activity. How many categories scope 3 identifies there? They clearly, distinctly identify 8 different categories where you can clearly identify emissions happening. When I talk about after I do the processing of good, after I processing of good, and I put a wrap, etc., around it, and the moment it leaves my gate, or even in some time in gate, it leaves my operational, operational assembly line or line, it will be counted as a downstream till the time customer uses it. Okay. So that all activities downstream activity, including investment and franchisee here, are two unique activities which are also counted in downstream activity. Because after profit comes into your business, when you realize your sales, then only you do the investment. That's a common fundamental, and that's why it is accounted as investment. In franchisee also, most of the time, the contract is like such that they have to pay for the services they are using it. So the moment you realize the income and then you create additional income after production, it goes into downstream activity, and that's why it is a part of downstream activity. So 8 in upstream and 7 in downstream. In total, there are 15 scope 3 activities. Now, as I told you, based on the sector, these numbers goes up and down. Okay, based on the sector, the scope 3 emissions varies. For example, financial services industry, if you will see, most of their emission comes from scope 3 emission. This goes up to 98%, in some cases 99%. Okay, financial services like banks, NBFCs, mutual fund companies, etc. They have most of the emission as user source. Wherever they are investing, that guy must be doing some emission and they have to record for it. Then comes the capital goods. So capital goods manufacturing sector is another one, like fridge manufacturer, AC manufacturer, machineries manufacturer, heavy equipments manufacturer. All these guys again has large amount of scope 3 emission. Then comes transport, OEMs, real estate, construction, metal mining, agriculture, where you will see less than 50% of contribution of scope 3. That starts only after coal. So up to coal, it is around 60 to 70% scope 3. And after coal, paper, forestry, electric utility, transport service, steel and cement industry specifically lies with a lower share of scope 3. Here scope 1 and 2 takes the larger share. Actually, 1 gets much larger than scope 2. Scope 2 will be always lower. Why? Because it's only energy which you consume through purchasing it. Mostly the electricity or heat or steam, right? There are clearly 4 sources of scope 2. So this a smaller dark line, I don't know if it is visible to you or not, is the scope 2, which in all cases remains very minuscule compared to scope 3 or scope 1. Now, as per CDP data, of course, there is a statistic. These all I am taking from CDP disclosures. Currently, corporate supply chain scope 3 emissions are 26 times higher than the operational estimates. That's how it is. Okay. The another statistics is importance of scope 3, which we need to know.
Vivek, I have one fundamental question. So let's say I'm a design maker of Apple phone, and then I have scope 1. I am calculating scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emissions, right? So when I'm calculating the scope 3 emission, so it is actually a scope 1 or scope 2 emission of my raw materials supplier, right? Or the phone supplier.
Yes,
For
they
for
are.
ease, let's say it's only scope 1 and scope 2 for simplistic assumption, I'm just saying. So it's kind of double counting everywhere. So let's say the phone manufacturer, that entity is also calculating its greenhouse gas emission. So that greenhouse gas emission, that entity will show as scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, and whatever is the value of that emission on the basis of the total product which they are supplying to Apple. Apple shows it as part of their scope 3. So it's kind of, double counting everywhere.
Very good
What is
fundamental, very good
what
fundamental question. Very good. However, yesterday or day before yesterday, Bharti ji, you asked this question.
Yesterday only, sir. Yeah.
Yesterday, okay.
maybe after I
Yeah, you left. That's the issue. So let me repeat it for the benefit of all again. How we do GDP calculation and GNA calculation. If you recall that concept, then it becomes very easy to understand. That is why categorization in carbon emission is important. The moment I say scope 3 emission, that goes to my ancillary businesses. Generally, right? Either they are in the upstream or in the downstream. So auto, for example, auto ancillary business has a value worth of say $100 million. That is the industry in Pune currently reporting. But an auto businesses in Pune compared to compared to Chennai produces good worth of say $1,000 million. Okay.
Mhm.
Now there is a double counting here, right? Why? Because the auto company has bought the part from the auto ancillary business only, 10% of that. So how GDP will be calculated? What we do in GDP, we say that what value addition these guys have done on the basis of that GVA, right? Gross value addition. On the basis of that, like GST. GST also happen on the same basis. The previous guy has already billed you a GST. The next guy, it builds you a GST based on his differential income, isn't it? It doesn't get levied on the whole thing. Same thing happens here. And I want you to watch yesterday video. Even though you think I urge you to watch
But
it. We have
I
this.
thought it was only for 5 minutes, so I didn't really go back and
Oh,
checked it because we were there
you
till
left early.
9:30.
You
We
left
were there
early. You left. What time you left?
9:30.
No, this discussion must have happened at 9 o'clock then. Just watch the video. Yeah. We have taken 5-7 minutes explaining the same thing what I have explained you, Megha. If it is only 5 minutes, then you need not to watch it again. But this is exactly is this concept is convincing, first of all? Or you want me to
No,
take one more?
Vivekji, one question.
Yes.
Are you saying that it's a kind of an offset they will do in this case also?
Look, first of all, whose responsibility is to check there is a double counting? Double counting has only trouble if I'm taking a company, I know he has his own emission is scope 1. He has purchase emission from scope 2. And he has definitely purchased with a long distance in scope 3. That's why this bifurcation is important. When I check this company, I check for scope 1 and 2 emissions. Why? Because scope 2 is relevant to scope 1. जितना प्रोडक्शन किया है उतना ही तो इलेक्ट्रिसिटी कंज्यूम करेंगे ना डायरेक्टली प्रोपोर्शनलिटी generally happens. Yeah, if there is a industry specific differential, that's a different discussion. Let's not complicate the thing. So point here is, as a company, I am responsible for a scope 1, but I am also showing what is my scope 2 and scope 3. What is the benefit when we do NDC calculation, nationally determined calculations as a national level, and I am reporting it to the UN body, UNFCCC. At that point in time, I will check from this industry, this is a supply chain emission. From this industry, this is the scope 1 emission. Is it matching? Not matching. Catch this guy. There is some guy who is doing the greenwashing. That's why greenwashers are in more trouble when the nationally you start reporting. Have you heard about this gold data issue? Gold data, there is a fiasco on gold data. This is the press release of today. Yeah, go to just search on Economic Times. You will find government has failed to get the data correct, gold data. Okay, it's a blooper which has happened. Similarly, government is always worried about it. And how they have come to know? By doing the triangulation, right? कितना custom पे हुआ है, कितना मैंने report किया, अरे difference आ रहा है. And it is nothing to do with smuggling. This is a real-time GST being paid, right? So they have come to know there is a blooper. Immediately, all people have lamented the government gone back and revised the number. Similarly, here happens, in this case also happens the same thing. Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's go to next discussion. So yeah, importance, right? Very important, very important. Importance of scope 3 emissions. What are those importances? So examine their supply chain for emission hotspot. Why? Because 80% of the emission happens with the 20% of your activity. So there will be only 20% of the points which are emitting excessively, and you need to be conscious about it. So if you address those, put into your mitigation plan, those automatically you will be able to control your emission. Are you with me? So that's the importance number one. That's why scope 3, and scope 3, as you know, is 97 to 99% in most of the cases. On an average, it is around 94%. So my point is, scope 3 emission, that is why it becomes important, because then you know what are the hot spots, and most of the hot spots will be in your scope 3. Determine, the second step is to, an important point is that you have to determine the threat to their supply chain resources and energy. By this way, it also enables you to know, is China is good for me or is it Germany is good for me? Because China always use the used raw material, steel, specifically aluminum, etc. They will use third time, not like recycling, and they will not even tell you that it is recycled. They will give you the cheapest possible equipment. So that's another problem you need to understand, and that is why you need to create a variety in supply chain. Okay, so reliability on one supply chain provider is not preferable in ESG fundamentals. Third is determining the threats to their supply chain resources and energy. If I know this industry is emitting too much of carbon dioxide, you need to also find alternatives in that case. That tomorrow I don't want to use steel, right? What will be my alternative? So my alternative could be carbon induced materials, right? There are materials now which can be actually made from the DAC machines. So DAC machines which collect the powder, converts the carbon into powder. You can make certain rigid material with that. So these kind of innovation thinking also comes when you start focusing on your supply chain emissions. Then, of course, identifying the potential for energy and efficiency and cost saving. If possible, you can guide those supply chain providers who are using very old generators, very old conveyors. Yeah, help them to replace it, bring the new technology, invest in the capital goods with them rather than just wait and get the excessive carbon emission. Are you with me? Yeah, they are using normal bulbs. You go in, Mumbai suburban, you will find a lot of suppliers are still not using LED lights, even though it's a cheaper alternative. Why? Because they find it more comfortable, visibility is more, etc., etc. Different reasons, thousands of reasons they will give you why they are still not changing to LED. So small points helps you, and you can go and tell them that, boss, if you will use this, this is my new contract. If you don't use it, I am shifting my supply chain. Then, of course, it also helps in engaging and helping the supplier to implement sustainable initiative and improve their goods and energy efficiency, right? And this also helps in your proper reporting. So it gives you a comprehensiveness in assessment. Stakeholder accountability gets established because supply chain providers are your stakeholder as well. Regulatory compliance, where they are very conscious about your total emissions, will be they will be talking about. Then comes the regulatory compliance, competitive advantage. Such kind of activity, supply chain robustness is one of the recent times phenomena where you can even generate your competitive advantage. In the advent of China, being pinpointed for throttling the supply chain network world across, supply chain itself has become competitive advantage for certain countries, including India. What is the challenge? Challenge is, of course, data availability in scope 3 and data consistency. Because these guys, first of all, they do not have very specific systems. Even Excel sheet which they are maintaining is useless. And, and they have a lot of churn of employee as well. A smaller company has more churn, right? So data consistency and availability is the first two important challenge which we need to understand and try to mitigate it in the beginning itself. Then comes the supply chain complexity itself based on the business you are in, like API, pharmaceuticals, right? It's a API based business. Now, dictating terms to API provider will be very difficult because they are manufacturing in billions of dollars, right? You are just a small cog in the wheel. So dictating them terms becomes very difficult. Supplier engagement itself is a challenging aspect of ESG. Right now, everybody is suffering, but people with the larger volume is always able to maintain it. And of course, emission estimation in supply chain is equally challenging. This is one of the numbers which I have discussed several times throughout our GHG accounting session. And that was that how many companies in last 10 years has reported, scope 3 emissions. So you can see still this last 2 year number, if I have checked it recently, it is around 57%. So the highest number of scope 3 emission reporters are 57%. And highest number of scope 1 emitters are around 89 to 90%. Okay, so that disparity do exist and we have to consider that. If you come to come to realization that based on the upstream or downstream activity, right, you will understand that most of the companies are not even reporting emission sources. For example, business travel, most of them are reporting, first of all, it is having 8% of the total scope 3 emission, right? Jet fuels, etc. is major reason. Trucks are major reason here. And lowest is in upstream is anything other than what is listed here, like leased asset. Leased asset is lowest in upstream and franchisee is lowest in downstream. Okay, that's this particular graph explains. Then comes the identifying emission sources. Now here onwards, we'll go into upstream and downstream discussions. So be careful because anyway, I will go on each of them and explain you in detail how to calculate it, etc. That's why I'm saying that we need one more day. Okay. Anyway, today I think a lot of people have not joined in. So we'll run for another 10-15 minutes and we will stop. I will complete the introduction session and upstream and downstream, I want to do it together. Okay. So I will do it tomorrow. We will complete it in 2 hours time, right? Otherwise you will be lost. Why? I will tell you now. Because in upstream, there is, of course, raw material, which is also a major stuff, like Bhartiji just now explained us, that there is a 53% emission is just coming from the mobile manufacturing, right? Which is a purchase good and service for Apple Mobile. If you see capital goods is the second category. But after that, till business travel, everything is murkier. Why? Because fuel and energy related activity is available in scope in upstream and even in downstream. Upstream transportation and distribution is there. There will be downstream transportation and distribution. There will be a waste generated in operation, which becomes an upstream issue if you are selling it to the third party to process it, right? And in the user side also it has. What is that? That is an end use. End use may be aapka bottle. For example, in Unilever case, the bottle of shampoos or sachet of shampoos gets wasted. Where it is landing is a question which Unilever to answer in their scope 3 estimations, right? It is going to the landfill or people are collecting it and give it. In milk industry, by the way, there is advantage. You know, in milk industry, what is the advantage? Anybody can guess?
It's recycling, no?
It is recycled. Why? Because there is a value to the milk packets. So a lot of people, traditionally, they are doing it. Means last 20 years it is happening. It's not a recent phenomena because of ESG. They know there is a value to each packet, right? So they are drying and keeping and selling, specifically the people who have that kind of resources to do, right? Otherwise, there is another challenge with milk packets. Last batch, we had a oceanographer, Manish, who has scored really well. He works on, he did a research, PhD research on that there is a microfiber plastic of milk packets, and it is not happening because all the milk packets is going in the dustbin. Anybody can guess what is the reason apart from the milk packet going into landfill and ocean eventually? The cut, the cut people do on the packets of milk, the small
The
cut.
small ones.
Yes, that is the massive trouble. And how it is processing now, even in human blood, it has been found out. So they have done a tracer study. It's not one country study. He has done with the Goa Institute of Technology. It's a several country has contributed to, and there was a previous study available. So they have taken that and they have taken the Indian context. Indian context may specifically this, packets corner is coming as a question mark. Internationally, they have shifted to again to the bottles, right? And this was
Now it is suggested that only 3/4 you can cut it, and 1/4 you must leave it in the same packet.
that education is happening now. That
Yeah.
education is happening. So hopefully
True.
people will understand and they maintain it because it is coming to your health. They have found out, the study found out that because of the fish taking that, it's getting, it's a micro, it's a nano kind of plastic which is going into sea, and these sea fish are absorbing it and they are coming to your food plate and eventually in your blood. And it has been found out. Clearly, it has been established. With the fish eaters, it is more. With other eaters, again, the value chain of those is coming to a smaller amount. So vegetarians are in good situation in this case, at least. Okay, so that is why we need to understand both sides together. So let me introduce to all those eight major in upstream, seven measures in downstream. So purchase good and service, of course, emission from production of those good and service purchased by the company need to be accounted for. Capital goods, emission from production of capital goods, which is acquired by a company, need to be accounted for. Fuel and energy related activities, of course, emission associated with fuel and energy, which you get to scope 1 and 2 need to be accounted for. Upstream transportation and distribution, the trucks and distribution network you are using to bring your raw material to your site has emission, which is part of purchase product, need to be accounted for. Waste generated in operation is another challenge. So we say every step there is a 2% loss, right? That 2% adds to your scope 3 emissions. It doesn't get out of the system. So you put 100 tons of cement, 100 tons of limestone in the beginning, and you only got 80 tons of cement packets, right? So 20 ton is lost. Now that 20 ton need to be checked for waste generated. How much of it has gone to the waste? Yeah, or how much of it has gone into the dust? Because in cement plant, that's another challenge right now we have, right? It goes into a atmosphere directly, and a lot of people gets impacted as well. So that's the part of upstream transportation and waste generated from operation. Then comes the business travel. Of course, emission from travel undertaken for business purposes, which can be management travel, which can be your employee travel, all need to be accounted for. Employee commuting is a upstream scope 3. Till the time employee comes and does the production, that need to be accounted for. So is he using metros? Is he using bus? Is he using electric bus? Is he using a car which is electric? Is he using the which make of the car? Is he using SUV? All that need to be accounted for, and that accounting happens on the employee committee. Last but not least is upstream asset, which can be your distribution warehouse which you are using in play, or it can be your any network leased asset, for example forklifts, etc. If you are leasing those trucks, you are leasing, all that will come here, right? Which is not included in scope 1 and 2. Then comes this downstream side. At downstream side, it starts with downstream transportation and distribution. So that confusion I want to remove. So I want to put it together so we can learn it really better. So emission from transportation and distribution. So whatever material, finished goods material you are sending to your distributor, dealers, or to the direct consumer place need to be checked. And that will be part of your scope 3 downstream emissions. Then comes the processing of sold products. How person who received it is using your goods. So you might be sending patties and breads and cheese, right, to your franchisee. And now franchisee unravels that, put it everything, heats it up. All that emission need to be accounted under this particular area if you are not accounting for franchisee operation area. Okay, that package supply is a separate contract, right? Generally, the franchisee will have two types of contract. One is their royalty, which they are charging on your name, branding, marketing, etc. And the second will be on the supply chain network. So they control the supply chain. In that case, you need to see how they are processing. And after eating, there is a paper wrap to the burger. So what happens to that paper, right? What happens to that box? How the delivery is happening, all that is a part of use of the sold product, right? In Unilever case, we saw that water used for rinsing your shampoo or body gel requires accounting for. Clear? So that is the part. Then you have an end of life treatment of the sold product. So how these guys are using that bottle. Again, rural India, there are creative uses. Kids are playing. Yeah, so still it remains not going into the landfill as frequently as in the urban area, right? We throw. Of course, we do ola kachra, sukha kachra, all that we do. But point here is it doesn't end up in right places. Now that need to be accounted for. Then comes the downstream lease assets. Again, people get confused with the upstream. Warehouses is the challenging stuff. Here, you have to always remember one nuances, and somebody will ask, and I will explain at that point in time again. If you are constructing the warehouse, right, and giving it on the lease basis to your distributor, which scope will it be?
It becomes your asset and you are controlling it.
Yes.
So
So
therefore, it should come under scope 1.
Okay. So emission happening there, you are saying it will be a scope 1. That's a wrong answer.
Because it's your asset, right? You're constructing and giving it on lease.
Am I using it?
So operational control concept will come into play here.
Absolutely. Now operational control will play. So he is operating inside it. So he decides that how much AC he want, how much chiller he want, how much lighting he needs. He decides about it. I am only responsible for that money which I am receiving on account of putting my warehouse at lease. So I will take that only as my lease because there is no ownership even, right? Ownership is 100%, but it's been leased. So that lease value I should be taking rather than the ownership of that asset, right?
Okay.
30,000 का आ रहा है, 1 लाख का monthly आ रहा है, 10 लाख का आ रहा है, तो that 10 lakh is my concern, which I need to be worried about against which will be kind of depreciation value versus rental value. You again, you check that and compensate and that bring into financial.
What would be the emission for someone who is constructing the warehouse? So let's say a company has constructed the warehouse and given it to whoever to operate it. So the operation, the scope 1 emission will fall under company B. But what about company A? What will he do? What will it do?
The construction period, we always said, is a kind of capital good calculation.
Right, right.
So capital good calculation, again, is it coming for me to operate with? Am I going to operate this premise for myself or is it going to be leased to somebody else? Because I have raised the question of lease, I'm asking this question. That question need to be answered. If you were not knowing there is a downstream lease asset calculation, I would have asked a simple question. If I am doing a new factory premise construction period का कार्बन अकाउंटिंग होना चाहिए कि नहीं होना चाहिए? होना चाहिए. वो क्या मोस्टली द बिल्डिंग का होगा, राइट? द बिल्डिंग का मैंने जो रॉ मटेरियल यूज किया है उसका होगा, करेक्ट? तो देयर इज अ रॉ मटेरियल कैलकुलेशन व्हिच इज स्कोप 3. correct? That we can remove. And then there is a capital asset which is getting created, which will be part of scope 1. And that too, to the extent of WIP. कितना आप recognize कर रहे हो अपने book में, that will decide that number. Again, differential is my concern here. जो raw material को दे दिया और वो scope 3 में calculate कर दिया, I should not account it. What I will account कि raw material के बाद how much value add I have done? What is my record value in my asset? That is the capital goods value asset minus raw material. If I have accounted for scope 3, will my scope 1? Very good question, by the way.
No, but
This is
Vivek, I am not clearly, completely clear. So
Okay.
let's say if I have just for simplistic sake, let's say I have started constructing a warehouse and it's WIP, and raw material is only, I mean, very simplistic, some, cement and some of the construction material for which I have accounted for as purchase of raw material. Now that building itself will not have any emission. So everything gets recorded under raw material only, right? Scope 3.
That's a good question again. So let me explain what I differential said. Building, when you are constructing the building, how to give you an example? There is a market value of a building. For
Value
example,
addition.
आप खरीदने जाते हो ना, आप बिल्डिंग खरीदते हो, फ्लैट खरीदते हो, राइट? फ्लैट खरीदते हो, करेक्ट? Say in Bangalore, the prices are around 15,000 rupees a square feet. That's a flat value, correct? Do you know what is the construction value? With EPC, वही आएगा बनाएगा. अगर आप विला बनवा रहे हो, what is that number? It's hardly out of 15,000. Hardly it is right now 3,000.
Okay.
If you are doing really luxurious, around 5,000 with swimming pool, etc. What is that 10,000? Now, what will be my record? अब मैं आप बताओ, जब मैं लोन लूंगा, ओके, तो मैं क्या रेट पे लोन लूंगा उस फ्लैट का जो वैल्यू रहेगा, वो जो मार्केट रेट रहेगा उस पे, राइट? रजिस्ट्री मार्केट रेट पे होती है, स्टाम्प ड्यूटी मार्केट रेट पे लगती है, लोअर वैल्यू पे कभी नहीं लगेगी. वो कहाँ रहता है? वो कभी लैंड में होता है वैल्यू, कभी वैल्यू उस बिल्डिंग के लोकेशन पे होता है, राइट? इट्स नॉट नेसेसरी कि वहां पे सारे लैंड एक ही वैल्यू के नहीं होंगे. जो क्रॉस सेक्शन ऑफ रोड होगा उसका अलग वैल्यू होगा. सो दैट इज द सेम वे in accounting also we do the same thing. There will be a impairment we do the value of calculation. So might be अगर मैं स्टील का वैल्यू लिया, पूरा स्टील का स्कोप 3 कैलकुलेशन किया, करेक्ट? बिकॉज स्टील ही आ रहा है ना इवेंचुअली. बट दैट स्टिल विल जस्टिफाई माई प्रोक्योरमेंट? नो, माई प्रोक्योरमेंट इज उस पर 30 डे का उसने ट्रेनिंग भी दिया था मेरे को ईपीसी करने के बाद, राइट? ईपीसी का वैल्यू एग्जैक्टली प्रोक्योरमेंट का वैल्यू नहीं होता है. वो इंजीनियरिंग डिजाइन का होगा, जो उसके इम्प्लीमेंटेशन के बंदे होंगे उनका होगा. वो इमिशन में कहाँ रिकॉर्ड करूं? रॉ मटेरियल में तो आएगा नहीं ना. कोई भी आप
बट
अगर
वो सर्विसेज में आएगा ना, वो सर्विसेज में आएगा ना. लेट्स से ट्रेनिंग है, वो सब सर्विसेज में आएगा, पार्ट ऑफ सर्विसेज. सो एनीथिंग, आइदर आई एम बाइंग गुड्स और आई एम बाइंग सर्विसेज.
तो आप जब भी
जैसे लेबर भी है,
आप,
वो भी वही होगा.
तो वही मैं एग्जांपल दे रहा हूँ. अगर आप लोन देते हो किसी फैक्ट्री को सेटअप करने के लिए, आप सर्विस अलग नहीं करते हो. आप बोलते हो कि उसकी बिल्डिंग का पूरा कॉस्ट कितना आने वाला है. अब वो ईपीसी के थ्रू आ रहा है कि वो खुद बैठ के बनवा रहा है, वो उसका हेडेक. वो आपको बिल ला के देगा कि बॉस ये मेरा टोटल कंस्ट्रक्शन का वैल्यू है. उस कंस्ट्रक्शन वैल्यू में इफ यू हैव सीन फैक्ट्री बीइंग सेटअप और इफ यू कैन गूगल इट, यू विल फाइंड ईपीसी वैल्यू में सब कुछ इंक्लूडेड होता है. मोस्टली चाइनीज वाले फैक्ट्री में तो 1 साल तक रहता है कि भैया 1 साल तक आप ही का लोग ऑपरेट करेगा, मैं ऑपरेट भी नहीं करूंगा. वो ट्रायल रन में काउंट करो या मेरा प्रॉपर प्रोडक्शन काउंट करो. वाई? बिकॉज दैट टेक्नोलॉजी आई डोंट नो. सो ये एक चैलेंज है जो रॉ मटेरियल से थोड़ा ऊपर ही होता है वैल्यू, कभी भी रॉ मटेरियल के बराबर होएगा ही नहीं. सो नाउ वेयर आई विल रिकॉर्ड दैट इज अ पार्ट ऑफ माई कैपिटल गुड्स. Capital goods is not only the raw material. Capital good is also all ancillary which is happening around it. Generally in factory setup की बात कर रहा हूँ. By the way, it's a deep discussion मेगा. ये अभी अगर मैं डिस्कस करूंगा तो बहुत लोग, मुझे लगता है कि they will not even follow it because they do not know it.
All right.
But are you following it, Miss? You ask a question, I want you to be completely satisfied, then only we'll move next. EPC, have you heard about EPC? First of all, let me start from there.
Not really.
Okay, so EPC is a way of starting a company. Okay, I think the best person to answer here is the board of director. Sir, आप एक
Engineering,
explain करें.
planning.
Yeah,
Engineering, procurement, and construction.
correct, absolutely. So उसमें let's hear from a person who has experience doing it. आपने फैक्ट्री बनते हुए देखा होगा, सेटअप आपने करवाया है. So how it
So,
works?
Vivek, in the interest of time, I'm okay. I mean, we can have an offline discussion also on this. But मुझे अभी पूरी clarity आई नहीं है. Lease is something which I need more handle on. So
Okay, anyway, we will have a session on tomorrow when we will take up this particular, and there is a calculation we will take up. Good. Thank you
ठीक
for
है.
allowing me to move on because I need to close another 2 minutes. Okay, so
और
average number of scope 3 reported by category is how much? Guys, look at the graph and tell me how many categories generally companies are reporting on an average. Yellow color bars. Anyone?
5.7.
5.7, which is divided by 15. How much? 30%, 33%, 35%, 40%. 40% of the categories is only getting reported. So you can understand if Megha is struggling, everybody in the industry is struggling. Are you with me, Megha, now? Yeah, it's not easy. It's, for me, explaining, for me, it's smooth because I have done it. So I'm just telling you. But to understand it, when you will do practically, you will also struggle. And I have a struggle too to come up with this mindset. So it's
So
not
I'm part of financial industry. So at this point of time, I think my struggle would be maybe little less than a manufacturing or a
true,
cement industry.
true. But still, the highest was 8.2. The industry which has reported all the try to report all the categories, still they could not reach the 50% of the category. Yeah, that's the beauty of a scope 3. So any number, if you are reporting, people will appreciate you in the industry. How you will screen and identify the relevant scope 3 categories is becomes a very critical subject to understand. Because you know, right? You should be clever now, which you should report and which you should not report. So there are 8 parameters, which you can use to make that judgment. Take a screenshot of this, guys. Why I am asking you to take a screenshot? Because this links you with the actual document. Sorry, what did I say? This links you with the actual GHG protocol document because I have referred those clauses which you need to read from the sources. If you will go anywhere, that linkage you will miss. Are you with me? So read from directly from the source and only those parts which I am mentioning here. Take a screenshot, read it and come back tomorrow and brief me. What did you understand? How I should use size, influence, risk, stakeholder, outsourcing, sector guidance, and or any other measures in order to decide which particular category I should report and which category I should not report. Make sense? I hope everybody has taken that screenshot. Let's go to the last part of discussion, which is selection of calculation method for scope 3. Of course, we will go each of them and find out there are 3 alternatives. Yeah, but generally the selection criteria revolves around data availability, quality of data coming from that source, and cost versus effort need to be considered. I have given you already that example, which I was supposed to give here, was relating to Indian Railways. One of the subsidiary of Indian Railways, where they have more than 40 offices and they were only getting data from one office. Why? Because cost and effort, right? It was very difficult to get, and then quality, real-time, timeliness of that data was challenging. If you have these challenges, what will you do? You will do a combination of calculation method. Here in scope 3, the smartest person will always try to use all the options available to them and try to mix it up so that they have accuracy. So triangulation is one way which we have applied in 1 and 2 because the numbers are smaller, the sources will be limited, and it will be in your control. But in scope 3, sources are not in your control. So what will you do? You will try and apply different method, take a combination of those, put this fish diagram, which is in the left-hand side, and then come up with how you can reduce your cost calculating a scope 3 emission. With that, we have come to an end. There is one more example of coffee company. I do not want to waste time right now because we have already crossed the time. If required, I will cover it tomorrow. With that, we have come to introductory session of Scope 3. Tomorrow, upstream and downstream. I will go with little speed, and then at the end, we will have Q&A. So keep the time after 9 o'clock, because then I will give you half an hour. But mostly, I will not take any questions in general, because there is a calculation. So I will ask you a question. You have to respond then and there, those calculations and methodology which you are selecting or not selecting. Those questions we will have, but general question we will take at the end of session. And that's a clear discussion. Otherwise, I will struggle tomorrow because some massive slides are there. With that, we have come to end of the session, and I need to close immediately. We will catch up again tomorrow, 7 o'clock.
Okay.
Is it okay, guys?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Good. Good night.
Bye. Good night. Take care.